Hey everyone, all of you friends of Black Rock Forest and those interested in the work and the history and the future of the forest. Just a follow-up on the last video I made, which mostly focused on the color images, which were taken by our drone. I mentioned that the drone was outfitted with a sensor which could make these kinds of calculations, which were called NDVI, or Normalized Differential Vegetation Index. And it's a ratio of red to near infrared light. And that ratio, for different physiological reasons, will tell you whether the vegetation is fairly healthy or active or productive. There are a lot of questions about exactly how you interpret it and what it means, and ratios are always strange numbers to work with than more straightforward numbers. But even so, it's widely used, and you can see that this represents what the sensor showed from the perspective of NDVI. Recall that this is what the photo looked like when we pieced together the 541 different photos. And we could see the oak removal experimental plots quite clearly, the white probably representing the dead oaks. And then the colors, because it's late in the fall, showing us that probably maples or other trees are beginning to replace the oaks that have been removed. And we took a look at 3 dimensions and so forth. So look at that other video if you haven't. But here's where, just to give you a quick explanation about what NDVI can tell you, we could actually go back and say, what are the consequences for the productivity or the health or some of the other ecosystem level properties of this system by comparing with the NDVI. And this is what it looks like when the images are stitched together. And you can see that if you were to go and to quantify the amount of color, how red it is or versus how green it is, you'd get a very interesting picture of how this patch of forest, which you'd expect pretty much to look like this, now looks quite different because of the impact of the oak removal experiments. You can also see that there's sort of impacts of like a road or dwellings and other land use or land management practices. It would be nice to do this for a larger area of the forest with a slightly larger drone, but quite excited about being able to load this up into different software and actually analyze the impacts of the experimental manipulations in those plots. And to do so perhaps several times a year and maybe for a few years, so we can get a sort of temporal dynamics to the whole process of the change in the forests as our oaks are experiencing a series of challenges, not just from pathogens, but by climate change and also by different management strategies as well. Thanks everyone. I hope these 2 videos together give you a fun way of looking at our forest. And I look forward to producing some more as the time goes on.